They told her she didn't belong in first class. They mocked her hoodie, laughed at her boarding pass, and threatened to arrest her if she didn't move to the back of the plane. They thought she was just another passenger they could bully. They were wrong. Dead wrong. The woman they just kicked off wasn't just a traveler. She was the woman who owned the very airplane they were sitting in. What happens when you humiliate a billionaire who holds the lease on your entire fleet? You're about to find out. This is the story of how one phone call grounded an airline, cost a CEO his job, and served the coldest plate of karma in aviation history. Buckle up. The air inside JFK's Terminal 4 was thick with the scent of overpriced coffee and the palpable stress of holiday travel. For most people, this was a nightmare. For Dr. Vivienne Sterling, it was just another Tuesday. Vivienne adjusted the noise-cancelling headphones over her ears, drowning out the crying toddler near gate B32. She looked nothing like what people expected from the CEO of Sterling Aviation Capital, a logistics and aircraft leasing firm that quietly controlled 30% of the commercial jets currently in the sky over North America. Today, she wasn't wearing the tailored Chanel suit or the Louboutin heels she wore to board meetings in Zurich. She was tired. She had just come off a 14-hour site inspection in the Mojave Desert. She was wearing a charcoal grey oversized hoodie, black compression leggings, and a pair of beat-up limited edition sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore no makeup. To the untrained eye, she looked like a tired student, or perhaps an exhausted mother traveling alone. To the staff of Stratosphere Airlines, she looked like an easy target. Vivienne approached the gate for Flight 8082 to London Heathrow. She held her phone out, the digital boarding pass displaying the bold letters, 1A, First Class. The gate agent, a man named Greg, whose name tag hung crookedly on his polyester vest, didn't even look up from his computer screen. Zone 1 only, ma'am. Economy boarding starts in 20 minutes. Please step aside. Vivienne didn't move. Her voice was calm, holding the rasp of exhaustion. I am Zone 1, Seat 1A. Greg finally looked up. His eyes scanned her outfit, the hoodie, the sneakers, and a sneer curled his lip. He let out a dramatic sigh, loud enough for the people in line behind her to hear. Ma'am, please don't hold up the line. This is the priority lane for first class and Diamond Medallion members. You need to wait for Zone 4. Scan the pass, Greg, Vivienne said, her voice dropping an octave. She wasn't asking. He rolled his eyes, snatching the phone from her hand with unnecessary roughness. He slammed it onto the scanner, expecting the angry red beep of a rejection. Beep! A soft green light illuminated the console. Greg froze. He stared at the screen. Sterling, Vivienne. Status, invitation only. He blinked. The system didn't just say first class, it flagged her as a VIP of the highest order, a code usually reserved for diplomats or A-list celebrities. But Greg's prejudice was stronger than his training. He couldn't reconcile the woman in front of him with the data on the screen. System glitch, he muttered, shoving the phone back at her. It happens. You're lucky today. Go on. But don't expect the flight attendants to let you keep that seat if the real passenger shows up. Vivienne took her phone back, her dark eyes locking onto his. The real passenger is standing right here. Have a nice flight, Greg. She walked down the jet bridge, feeling the adrenaline spike. She hated this. She hated that even with a net worth of 9 figures, she still had to fight for the basic dignity of a seat she had paid for. But she shook it off. All she wanted was a glass of champagne, her lie-flat seat, and 8 hours of sleep. She had no idea that Greg was just the warm-up act. The main event was waiting for her on the plane. The Boeing 747-300ER was beautiful. Vivienne knew it intimately. Her company had purchased this specific airframe 3 years ago and leased it to Stratosphere Airlines. She even knew the serial number stamped on the bulkhead plate. She found seat 1A, a private suite with a sliding door. She stowed her duffel bag in the overhead bin and settled into the plush leather chair. A flight attendant named Sarah, who looked exhausted but kind, offered her a pre-departure drink. "Sparkling water with lime, please," Vivian said, smiling. She was just closing her eyes when the commotion started. "No, I don't care what the app says. I demand to be seated immediately." The voice was booming, entitled, and getting closer. Vivian opened one eye. Walking down the aisle was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory for arrogant executives. He was wearing a navy blue suit that was too tight in the shoulders, a Patek Philippe watch that he made sure was visible, and enough cologne to fumigate the cabin. This was Carter Vance. He was the VP of sales for a mid-tier hedge fund, but he walked like he owned the Federal Reserve. Behind him trailed a younger associate, looking embarrassed. Carter stopped abruptly at row 1. He looked at his boarding pass, then at seat 1A, and finally at Vivian. His face turned a shade of red that clashed with his tie. "Excuse me," Carter barked, snapping his fingers near Vivian's face. "You're in my seat." Vivian didn't flinch. She slowly removed her headphones. "I beg your pardon?" I said, "You are in my seat," Carter repeated, louder this time. The other passengers in first class, mostly older businessmen and wealthy tourists, stopped their conversations to watch. "This is 1A. I always sit in 1A. You must be confused. Economy is back that way." He pointed a manicured finger toward the rear of the plane. Vivian tapped her screen. "I'm afraid you're the one who is confused. I have 1A. Perhaps you're in 1B. Carter scoffed, a wet, ugly sound. "I don't sit in 1B. I booked this flight specifically. Look at you. You're wearing a gym outfit. There is no way you paid $5,000 for this seat. What did you do? Sneak up here while the stewardess wasn't looking?" "Sir, please lower your voice," Sarah, the flight attendant, interjected gently. "Let me see your boarding pass." Carter shoved his phone in Sarah's face. "I am a platinum flyer. I spend more on this airline in a month than she makes in a year." Sarah squinted at his screen. "Mr. Vance, your seat is 2A. That's just behind this one. It's the same suite." "I don't want 2A, Carter shouted. "I want 1A. It has the extra legroom near the bulkhead, and I don't want to stare at the back of her head for 7 hours. He looked at Vivian with pure, unadulterated disgust. "This is ridiculous. Stratosphere used to have standards. Now they let anyone up here? It looks like a homeless shelter." Vivian stood up. She wasn't tall, but she had a presence that could silence a boardroom. "Sir, I suggest you take your assigned seat. You are disturbing the cabin." "Don't you talk to me," Carter spat. "I know who you people are. You use stolen credit cards, book the flights, and hope you don't get caught before you land. Well, you got caught." He turned to Sarah. "Get the purser, now. I want her removed. I'm not flying with a scammer in front of me. It's a security risk." "Mr. Vance, I can't," Sarah started. "Get the purser," Carter screamed. The tension in the cabin was razor-sharp. Vivian stood her ground, her heart pounding, not from fear, but from a cold, simmering rage. She reached into her pocket and touched her phone. She hoped it wouldn't come to this, but Carter Vance was digging his own grave. A moment later, the purser arrived. Her name was Janice. Unlike Sarah, Janice had a smile that didn't reach her eyes and a posture that screamed rigid bureaucrat. She had been flying for 30 years and had lost her patience for humanity somewhere around 1998. She took one look at the scene. Carter Vance, a platinum member in an expensive suit, red-faced and pointing, and Vivian Sterling, a black woman in a hoodie, standing calmly. Janice made a calculation. It was a prejudiced, lazy calculation, but it was the one she made. "What seems to be the problem?" Janice asked, directing the question to Carter, not Vivian. "The problem," Carter sneered, adjusting his cuffs, "is that this woman is in my seat, and I refuse to fly until she is moved. I suspect she hasn't paid for it. I want her vetted or removed." Janice turned to Vivian. Her tone was patronizing, like a kindergarten teacher scolding a naughty child. "Ma'am, I need to see your boarding pass and ID, right now." "I already showed the gate agent," Vivian said, her voice ice-cold. "And I showed her." She nodded at Sarah. "I need to see it," Janice insisted. Vivian held up her phone. Janice glanced at it, then looked at a clipboard she was holding. "I see. Well, there seems to be a double booking." "There is no double booking," Vivian said. "I booked this ticket 3 weeks ago. Full fare." Janice pursued her lips. "Mr. Vance is a platinum member. We have a policy regarding overbooking and priority seating." This was a lie. There was no such policy that allowed them to kick a paid first-class passenger out of their seat for another passenger on the plane. Janice just wanted the loud white man to stop yelling so the flight could leave on time. "So," Janice continued, "I'm going to have to ask you to move." "Move where?" Vivian asked. "We have a seat in Economy Plus, row 22. It's a window seat." The audacity hung in the air like smoke. They were asking her to downgrade from a $8,000 suite to a $400 seat just to appease a bully. "No," Vivian said. "Excuse me?" Janice blinked. "I said no. I paid for this seat. I am sitting in this seat. If Mr. Vance has a problem with 2A, he can get off the plane." Carter laughed, a cruel, barking sound. "See? I told you. Aggressive. Belligerent." "Janice, is it? If you don't get her off this plane, I'm calling corporate. I'm personal friends with the VP of Operations. I'll have your badge." Janice paled. The threat of corporate involvement terrified her. She squared her shoulders and turned on Vivian. "Ma'am, this is a direct order from the flight crew. You are disrupting the flight. You are being non-compliant. If you do not grab your bag and move to row 22 immediately, I will have the Port Authority police escort you off the aircraft, and you will be placed on the no-fly list. Is that what you want?" Vivian looked at Janice. She looked at Carter, who was smirking, already unbuttoning his jacket as if he had won. She looked around the cabin. No one said a word. The other passengers looked down at their phones, afraid to get involved. The injustice burned, hot and fierce. But Vivian Sterling was a chess player. She knew that arguing with a fool in public only made you look foolish. She needed a bigger board. "You're kicking me off?" Vivian asked softly. "I'm giving you a choice," Janice said. "Row 22 or the jetway?" Vivian nodded slowly. She reached up, grabbed her duffel bag from the bin, and slung it over her shoulder. "I won't be taking row 22, Vivian said. "Good choice," Carter laughed. "Don't let the door hit you on the way out, sweetheart." Vivian stopped right in front of Carter. She leaned in close. "Enjoy the seat, Mr. Vance. I hope it's comfortable, because it's going to be the most expensive seat you ever sat in." She turned to Janice. "I need you to mark in the log that I was denied transport involuntarily, despite having a valid ticket." "Can you do that?" "Just go," Janice snapped, pointing to the door. Vivian walked out of the plane. She walked up the jet bridge, past a confused Greg at the gate podium, and into the terminal. She didn't stop to argue. She didn't cry. She walked straight to a quiet corner of the waiting area, near the floor-to-ceiling windows where she could see the Boeing 737 sitting at the gate. She pulled out her phone. She didn't call customer service. She didn't call a lawyer. She opened her contacts and scrolled to a number saved as David Sterling Legal, VP Aviation Assets. She pressed call. "David," she said when he answered, her voice trembling with contained rage. "It's Vivian. I need you to pull the file on the Stratosphere Airways lease agreement for tail number N772SW. Specifically, look at Clause 14, Section B, regarding breach of owner conduct and reputational damage." David sounded confused. "Viv? I can do that, but why? Are you okay?" "No, David, I'm not okay. I'm currently standing in Terminal 4 because Stratosphere just kicked me off my own airplane." She watched as the cabin door of the plane closed. "I want you to exercise the immediate grounding clause. Revoke the airworthiness certificate authorization. Today. Right now." "Vivian, that will ground the flight. It might ground their whole Northeast fleet if we claim a systemic compliance failure. It's the nuclear option." Vivian watched the plane begin to push back from the gate. She saw Carter Vance's face in the window of seat 1A. "Push the button, David," she whispered. "Nuke it." Captain James Miller was a veteran pilot. He had flown F-16s in the Gulf War and had spent the last 20 years flying heavy metal for commercial airlines. He was currently commanding Flight 882, guiding the massive Boeing 727 through the labyrinth of taxiways at JFK. "Ground Stratosphere 882, holding short of Mike, ready for departure sequence," Miller said into his headset, his voice the steady, rhythmic baritone of a professional aviator. "Stratosphere 882, hold position," the controller replied. "Expect a 5-minute delay for spacing." Miller sighed and relaxed his grip on the tiller. In the cabin behind him, everything was proceeding as normal. Or so he thought. He picked up the interphone handset to call the purser, Janice. "Janice, we've got a short hold. How's everything back there? I heard we had a runner before pushback." "Just a disruptive passenger in first, Captain." Janice's voice crackled back, sounding relieved. "Refused to take her assigned seat in economy. We offloaded her. Mr. Vance is settled in 1A now. Champagne is flowing. We're good to go." "Copy that. Good work handling it. Let's get to London." Miller hung up. He checked his flight management computer. Everything was green. Suddenly, the radio crackled with an urgency that made Miller's stomach drop. It wasn't the casual drawl of the ground controller anymore. It was the sharp, rapid-fire tone of a supervisor. "Stratosphere 882, JFK Tower. Stop your aircraft immediately. I repeat, stop your aircraft immediately. Do not proceed to the runway. Acknowledge." Miller slammed on the brakes. The 300-ton aircraft lurched to a halt, the nose gear compressing violently. "Tower, Stratosphere 882. Stopping. What is the nature of the emergency? We have no fire indicators." "Stratosphere 882. This is not a mechanical issue," the supervisor said. "We have just received a Title 14 CFR mandatory grounding order. The registration for your aircraft has been suspended effective immediately by the lessor. You are no longer authorized to fly. You are operating an unregistered aircraft. Return to gate B32 immediately. Do not take off. I repeat, do not take off." Miller looked at his first officer, a young man named Dave, whose jaw was hanging open. Did the tower just say our registration was pulled?" Dave asked, his voice squeaking. "That's impossible," Miller muttered. "We leased this bird. The paperwork is solid." Miller keyed to the mic. "Tower, say again?" "We are mid-taxi. We have 300 souls on board. You want us to return to the gate because of paperwork?" "Captain, this comes from the FAA liaison office via Sterling Aviation Capital," the controller replied. "And everyone on the frequency, pilots from Delta, American, British Airways, was listening. They have invoked a repossession and safety hold. If you cross the hold short line, You will be in violation of federal law, and I will be forced to dispatch Port Authority to the tarmac. Turn around, 882. The cockpit went silent. A repo order. It was the stuff of nightmares for an airline. It meant the owner of the plane, the bank or the leasing company, had decided the airline wasn't trustworthy enough to keep the keys. Jesus, Miller whispered. Who did we piss off? He grabbed the interphone again. Janice, secure the cabin. We are returning to the gate. What? Why? Janice asked, panic rising in her voice. Mr. Vance is already complaining about the Wi-Fi not working. Forget Mr. Vance, Miller snapped, losing his cool. The owner of the plane just called the feds. We've been grounded. We're going back. Back in seat 1A, Carter Vance was swirling his glass of lukewarm champagne. He felt triumphant. He had asserted his dominance. The woman in the hoodie was gone, likely crying in a terminal somewhere, and he had his extra legroom. He pulled out his laptop, ready to work on a presentation about aggressive market tactics. Then the plane lurched, the engine spooled down. The aircraft began a slow, painful U-turn. Carter hit the call button. Ding, ding, ding. Sarah appeared, looking pale. Yes, Mr. Vance? Why are we turning? Carter demanded. London is east. We are turning north. The captain has informed us we have to return to the gate, Sarah said, her voice trembling. Unbelievable. Carter slammed his laptop shut. This is incompetence. I have a meeting tomorrow morning. If I miss it, I lose a client. Go tell the captain to fly the damn plane. Sir, I can't. Is it that woman? Carter's eyes narrowed. Did she call in a bomb threat? I bet she did. These people are petty. I knew she was a security risk. I don't know, sir. Well, when we get back to the gate, I want the police waiting, Carter said, crossing his arms. I'm going to press charges against her for delaying my flight. She's going to pay for this. He had no idea how right he was. She was going to pay, but not with money. Vivian hadn't moved. She stood by the window at gate B302, watching the hulking mass of the Boeing 777 crawl back toward her. It looked like a wounded beast retreating to its cave. Her phone buzzed. It was David. It's done, Viv, David said. I sent the writ of possession to the FAA and Stratosphere's corporate HQ in Atlanta. I cited material breach of contract based on denial of owner privileges and hostile operational environment. Technically, it's a stretch to ground the whole plane just because they bumped you. But the contract you wrote 5 years ago gives us absolute discretion on reputational harm. You really locked them in. I wrote that clause for a reason, David, Vivian said, her eyes fixed on the plane. I never thought I'd have to use it on myself. Stratosphere's general counsel is blowing up my phone, David continued. He's screaming. He says this is costing them $50,000 a minute. He says it's illegal. He's threatening to sue. Let him sue, Vivian said calmly. I have more lawyers than they have pilots. Tell him if he wants the plane back in the air, his station manager needs to meet me at gate B32, now. I'll relay the message. Viv, be careful. These airport situations can get volatile. I'm fine, David. Just keep the plane on the ground. Within 10 minutes, the gate area was chaos. The jet bridge extended and locked onto the plane. But they didn't let the passengers off immediately. First, a man in a cheap suit came running down the terminal concourse, sweating profusely, holding a walkie-talkie. This was Leonard Smalls, the station manager for JFK. He looked like a man who was having a heart attack. He ran up to Greg at the podium. "What is going on, Greg?" Leonard screamed. "Why is my London flight back at the gate? Why is Atlanta calling me, asking why our lease is voided?" Greg, the gate agent who had started this mess, looked terrified. I don't know, boss. The system was fine. We boarded everyone. We had one issue with a passenger, but we kicked her off. Who? Who did you kick off? Some lady. Zone 1 ticket. But she looked, rough. Hoodlum type. She was fighting with a platinum member over a seat. What was her name? Leonard demanded. Sterling. Vivian Sterling. Leonard stopped. The colour drained from his face so fast he looked like a ghost. He dropped his walkie-talkie. It clattered loudly on the floor. Sterling, Leonard whispered. You kicked off. Sterling? Yeah. Why? You idiot. Leonard grabbed Greg by the vest. Sterling isn't a passenger. Sterling Aviation owns the plane. We lease the jets from her. She's the landlord. Greg's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Where is she? Leonard spun around, scanning the waiting area frantically. Where is she? Vivian stepped out from the shadows of the window pillar. She had put her headphones around her neck. She looked calm, regal, and utterly terrifying. I'm right here, Leonard, she said. Leonard rushed over to her, his hands trembling. Dr. Sterling, oh my God, I am so sorry. There has been a terrible misunderstanding. I had no idea you were traveling with us today. Please, we can fix this. Atlanta is going crazy. Please just tell your legal team to lift the grounding order. We can get you on the next flight. We'll charter a private jet for you. I don't want a private jet, Leonard, Vivian said. I wanted seat 1A on my aircraft, the seat I paid for, the seat your staff physically threatened to remove me from. We will fire him, Leonard pointed at Greg. He's gone. Done. Just please, let the plane fly. We have cargo. We have connections. It's not just Greg, Vivian said. It's the culture, Leonard. You let a man bully me because of how I look. Your purser threatened me with the police because I didn't bow down to a platinum member. You think because I'm a black woman in a hoodie, I have no power? You think I'm just Zone 4? Before Leonard could answer, the door to the jet bridge opened. The passengers began to pour out, angry and confused. Leading the charge was Carter Vance. Carter looked furious. He stormed up the ramp, his face purple. When he saw Leonard, he marched right up to him. You must be the manager, Carter yelled, poking Leonard in the chest. This is unacceptable. I demand compensation, and I demand to know why we are back here. Is it that woman? Did she call the cops? Carter turned and saw Vivian standing there. He let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Oh, look, the trash is still here, taking up space. Did you enjoy ruining everyone's holiday? I hope you're happy. You're going to jail, you know that, right? Leonard looked at Carter. Then he looked at Vivian. He realized, with a sinking horror, that this man, this loud, arrogant man, was the reason his career was about to end. Sir, Leonard said, his voice shaking. Be quiet. Excuse me? Carter bristled. Do you know who I am? I am Carter Vance. And she, Leonard said, pointing a trembling hand at Vivian, is Dr. Vivian Sterling. She owns this airplane. She owns the lease on every 777 in our fleet. And because you insisted on taking her seat, she has just cancelled our contract. Carter froze. He looked at the plane. He looked at Vivian. His brain tried to process the information, but it malfunctioned. She owns the plane? Carter stammered. But, look at her. She's wearing a hoodie. Vivian took a step forward. The crowd of angry passengers who had been grumbling about the delay suddenly went silent. They sensed the shift in the atmosphere. The predator had just realized he was standing in a cage with a lion. Mr. Vance, Vivian said, her voice smooth and deadly. You told me earlier that you spend more in a month than I make in a year. Let's test that math. She pulled out her phone and put it on speaker. David, are you still there? I'm here, Viv. David's voice boomed through the quiet terminal. "Mr. Vance works for Apex Capital, doesn't he? I believe I saw the luggage tag on his briefcase." "Checking now," David said. Keyboard clacking was audible. "Yes, Carter Vance, VP of Sales at Apex." "And David," Vivian continued, keeping her eyes locked on Carter's terrified face. "Who is Apex Capital's biggest liquidity provider? Who underwrites their logistic infrastructure bonds?" There was a pause. Carter stopped breathing. "We do, Viv," David said. "Sterling Capital provides 40% of Apex's operational leverage." "Interesting," Vivian said. "David, call the CEO of Apex. Tell him we are reviewing our partnership. Tell him I'm concerned about the judgment of his senior executives, specifically their inability to assess risk." "No!" Carter screamed. He lunged forward, grabbing for the phone. "You can't do that! That's my job! You can't call my boss!" Two airport police officers, who had been called by Greg earlier to remove the disruptive woman, stepped in. But they didn't grab Vivian. They grabbed Carter, holding him back as he flailed. "You wanted the police, Mr. Vance?" Vivian asked. "Here they are." She turned to Leonard. "My plane stays on the ground until every member of the flight crew who enabled this is replaced, and until Mr. Vance is permanently banned from this airline. If he flies, the lease dies. Permanently." Leonard nodded rapidly. "Done. He's banned. Lifetime ban. Starting right now." Vivian looked at Carter, who was now being restrained, his face a mask of pure panic. "I told you, Carter," she whispered, leaning in so only he could hear. "It was going to be the most expensive seat you ever sat in." But the drama wasn't over. As the police began to drag a screaming Carter Vance away, a new figure emerged from the jet bridge. It was Captain Miller, and he looked like he was ready to go to war. "Who is responsible for this?" Miller bellowed, his cap in his hand. "Who grounded my bird?" Leonard pointed at Vivian. Miller marched over to her. He was a big man, imposing. He stopped inches from her face. The crowd held its breath. Miller looked at her. He squinted. Then his expression changed from anger to shock. "Vivi?" Miller asked. Vivian blinked, looking at the pilot closely for the first time. Her armor cracked just a fraction. "Jim?" she asked. "My God," Miller said, a smile breaking across his face. "Lieutenant Sterling? From the 4th Logistics Squadron? Bagram Airfield, 2009? Vivian smiled. "Captain Miller, I haven't seen you since the Kandahar airlift." You own this airline?" Miller asked, stunned. "I own the planes, Jim, and your purser just tried to have me arrested." Miller's face hardened. He turned slowly to look at Janice, the purser, who was standing by the gate door, clutching her clipboard like a shield. "Janice," Miller said, his voice low and dangerous. "Did you kick Lieutenant Sterling off my plane?" I followed protocol, Captain," Janice stammered. "Mr. Vance was a platinum member." "Vivian Sterling saved my life in a C-130 landing 10 years ago," Miller announced to the entire gate area. "She dragged me out of a burning cockpit. He ripped his epaulets off his shoulders, the 4 stripes of a captain. If she's not flying," Miller said, throwing his hat on the podium, "then neither am I. I'm not flying for a crew that treats a hero like trash." The crowd erupted. Passengers started clapping. Someone started filming. Vivian looked at the chaos she had unleashed. She had grounded the plane, fired the passenger, and paralyzed the airline. But she wasn't done yet. She had to finish it. The atmosphere in Terminal 4 had shifted from a travel hub to a gladiatorial arena. The air conditioning hummed, but the temperature seemed to have dropped 10 degrees. Captain Jim Miller stood beside Vivian, his arms crossed, a silent sentinel of aviation authority. The crowd of passengers, initially annoyed by the delay, was now rapt. Smartphones were held high, forming a galaxy of recording lenses. The hashtag #WhatEntertSterlingStorm was already trending on Twitter. The world was watching. Carter Vance, however, was not looking at Twitter. He was looking at his phone, which was vibrating violently in the hand of the police officer who had detained him. "It's ringing," the officer said, glancing at the screen. "Caller ID says The Wolf." Carter went pale. That's my CEO. Mr. Sterling. Please, Dr. Sterling, don't let him." Vivian gestured to the officer. "Let him answer. Put it on speaker. I want to hear what The Wolf has to say about risk management." The officer, sensing the shift in power dynamics and perhaps enjoying the show, handed the phone to Carter, but kept a firm grip on his arm. Carter's hands shook so badly he almost dropped the device. He tapped the green icon. "Hello? Sir?" The voice that erupted from the tiny speaker was loud enough to be heard 3 gates away. It was a voice of pure, unadulterated panic. "Vance! You idiot! You absolute moron! What have you done?" Carter flinched as if he'd been slapped. "Sir, I was just trying to get to the London meeting." "Shut up!" the CIO roared. "I don't care about the London meeting. I care about the fact that Sterling Aviation Capital just pulled their liquidity backing for our Asia-Pacific expansion. Do you know how much money that is, Vance? Do you have any concept of the zeros involved?" I didn't know she... "You didn't know?" The CEO laughed, a terrifying sound. "It's your job to know. You're in sales. You're supposed to know the whales from the minnows. You just tried to big league the woman who essentially owns the bank we borrow from. I just got an email from their legal team, Carter. They are triggering the character clause. They're calling the loans, all of them, tonight." Carter looked at Vivian. She was watching him with an expression of mild curiosity, like a scientist observing a bug under a microscope. "Sir, I can fix this," Carter pleaded, sweat dripping down his nose. "I'm with her right now. I'll apologize. "You won't do anything," the CEO screamed. "You are toxic, Carter. You are radioactive. Do not speak to her. Do not look at her. You are fired, effective immediately. Your corporate card is cancelled. Your access to the building is revoked. If you come within 500 feet of the office, I will have security throw you through the glass doors. You're done, Vance. You're finished on Wall Street. Do you hear me?" Click. The line went dead. The silence that followed was deafening. Carter Vance stood there, the phone slipping from his numb fingers and clattering to the floor. He wasn't just unemployed, he was obliterated. In the high-stakes world of finance, getting fired for costing the firm hundreds of millions meant he would never work again. He wouldn't even be able to get a job as a bank teller. He looked up at Vivian, his eyes brimming with tears of self-pity. You ruined my life." Vivian took a step closer, her voice barely a whisper, yet it carried the weight of a judge's gavel. "I didn't ruin your life, Carter. You did. You assumed that because I didn't look like you, I was beneath you. You assumed my value was determined by my hoodie, not my history. You played a power game, but you forgot the first rule of power. Never underestimate your opponent." She turned to the police officers. "Gentlemen, this man is no longer a passenger on this flight. He has no valid ticket, as he has been banned. He has no business on the premises. I believe that makes him a trespasser." The officers nodded. "Let's go, Mr. Vance," as they dragged a sobbing, broken Carter Vance away. The crowd didn't cheer. They just watched, stunned by the brutality of the karma they had just witnessed. But Vivian wasn't done. She turned her gaze to Leonard, the station manager, and Janice, the purser. Leonard was shaking. He knew he was next. "Dr. Sterling," Leonard stammered, "please, I have a mortgage. I have 2 kids in college." Vivian looked at him, and for a moment her eyes softened. Unlike Carter, Leonard wasn't malicious. He was just weak. He was a bureaucrat who followed the path of least resistance. But weakness in leadership was what allowed men like Carter to thrive. "Leonard," Vivian said calmly, "you have a choice. Right now. Anything. Anything you want." "You're going to get on the PA system," Vivian said, pointing to the desk. "And you are going to apologize, not to me, to every single person in this terminal. You are going to admit that Stratosphere Airlines prioritizes status over humanity. You are going to admit that you profiled a passenger. And then you are going to announce that every passenger on Flight 882 is receiving a full refund, plus a $5,000 travel voucher for their trouble." Leonard's eyes bulged. A full refund? And vouchers? That's over $2 million in losses. Corporate will kill me. Corporate is currently trying to figure out how to keep me from repossessing their entire fleet of 777s. "Leonard," Vivian said dryly, "I think they'll accept the $2 million hit. Do it, or I make the call to David again." Leonard didn't hesitate. He ran to the podium and grabbed the microphone. His hand shook as he began to speak, his voice cracking over the loudspeakers, apologizing to the terminal, admitting the fault, stripping away the corporate veneer to reveal the ugly truth of what had happened. Vivian listened, satisfied. Then she turned to Captain Miller. "Jim," she said, "you just quit." "Best decision I've made in 20 years. Miller grinned, though there was a hint of worry in his eyes. "Although my pension might take a hit." "I don't think so," Vivian smiled. "I'm not just an investor, Jim. Sterling Aviation is launching a new private charter division next month. Global reach, humanitarian aid, and executive transport. I need a director of flight operations, someone who knows that the person in the seat matters more than the price of the ticket." Miller stood straighter. "I'd be honored, Viv, but I'm expensive." "I'm a billionaire, Jim," she laughed. "I can afford you." She looked at Janice, the purser, who was trying to make herself invisible behind the counter. "And her?" Miller asked, nodding at Janice. Vivian's expression hardened. "She retires today, with full benefits because I'm not a monster, but she never works a customer-facing job again. Prejudice is a habit, Jim, and she's too old to break it. The silence that descended upon Terminal 4 following Carter Vance's arrest was heavy, physical, and absolute. It was the kind of silence usually reserved for cathedrals or the seconds following a thunderclap. The air conditioning hummed a low, industrial drone, but the frenetic energy of hundreds of stressed travelers had evaporated, replaced by a collective state of awe. Vivian Sterling stood in the center of it all. She hadn't moved. She hadn't raised her voice since the police arrived. She simply stood there, her hands loose in the pockets of her oversized charcoal hoodie, her posture relaxed yet immovable. To the hundreds of people watching, passengers, flight attendants, gate agents, and the security team, she no longer looked like a tired traveler in casual wear. She looked like a monolith. The hoodie had become a robe of office, the sneakers, the boots of a conqueror. Leonard Smalls, the station manager, who had spent the last decade climbing the corporate ladder by cutting corners and appeasing the wealthy, looked as though he had aged 20 years in 20 minutes. He was sweating through his cheap synthetic suit, his complexion sallow and grey. He held the microphone of the PA system in a hand that shook so violently the plastic casing rattled against his wedding ring. "Do it, Leonard," Vivian said. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the acoustic perfection of the silent gate area, it carried like a bell. "Apologize, and make sure they hear you in the back." Leonard swallowed hard, a dry, clicking sound in his throat. He looked at the faces staring at him. Angry faces, tired faces, faces that had watched him grovel to a bully like Carter Vance while dismissing a woman of substance. He pressed the button. Screech of feedback. Ladies and gentlemen, Leonard began, his voice cracking. Attention in the gate area. This is Leonard Smalls, station manager for Stratosphere Airlines. He paused, looking at Vivian. She didn't blink. She waited. I need to offer a formal and personal apology, Leonard continued, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. Not just for the delay, but for the conduct of our team today. We made a mistake, a grave mistake. We judged a passenger based on appearance. We prioritized status over dignity. We threatened a woman who deserved our respect, and we enabled a man who deserved none. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Airlines never apologized like this. They spoke in legalese and operational difficulties. They never admitted to moral failure. To rectify this, Leonard said, reading from the mental script Vivian had forced upon him, Stratosphere Airlines is issuing a full refund for Flight 882. Furthermore, every passenger will receive a voucher for $5,000 for future travel, and we are reviewing our training protocols effective immediately to ensure that no one is ever made to feel less than while flying with us. He released the button. The silence held for a heartbeat, and then it broke. Applause. It started with a single person near the back, a young man in a college sweatshirt, and spread like wildfire. It wasn't polite golf claps. It was raucous, cheering, whistling applause. It was the sound of ordinary people seeing justice served in real time. They weren't clapping for the money, though the money was nice. They were clapping because they had just watched a giant get knocked down. Vivian didn't smile. She didn't wave. She pulled her phone from her pocket and dialed David. David, she said, turning her back on Leonard. Release the bird. Are you sure, Viv? David's voice came through, crisp and professional. We have them in a chokehold. We could renegotiate the entire fleet lease right now. Drop the APR by 2 points. No, Vivian said, looking out the window at the massive Boeing 777-300ER. The point has been made. If we squeeze too hard, they go bankrupt, and then I have 50 planes sitting in the desert collecting dust. I want them bleeding, David, not dead. Reinstate the airworthiness certificate. Lift the Article 14 grounding order. Let them fly. Understood. Sending the release codes to the FAA database now. The transponder should go green in 30 seconds. Vivian hung up. She turned to find Captain Jim Miller standing next to her. He was holding a cardboard box that contained the contents of his cockpit bag, a headset, a logbook, a photo of his kids, and a half-eaten roll of mints. He had stripped the 4 gold stripes from his shoulders, leaving the black fabric of his uniform jacket looking oddly bare. You really did it, Vivian said, looking at the box. You walked away from a seniority number it took you 20 years to build. Miller looked at the plane he was supposed to fly. Viv, do you remember that night in Kandahar? The C-130? The hydraulic failure? I remember you landing a 60-ton aircraft on a dirt strip in a sandstorm with no nose gear, Vivian replied softly. I remember you coordinating the rescue from the cargo bay while the ramp was on fire, Miller corrected her. You didn't leave a single crate behind, let alone a soldier. Today, when I heard Janice talking to you like that, when I saw that suit, Vance, sneering at you, it brought it all back. I realized I've been flying a bus for a company that would sell its soul for a quarterly profit. I'm done. I don't want to fly for a logo anymore. I want to fly for a leader. Vivian felt a lump in her throat. She reached out and touched his arm. "The pay is better at Sterling Aviation, Jim. But the hours are worse. I work a lot." "I don't have a life anyway." Miller grinned, the tension leaving his face for the first time in an hour. "My ex-wife took the dog. I'm free as a bird." "Good," Vivian said, "because we're not going to London." "We're not?" "No, I have a meeting in Paris on Thursday, and I need a new wardrobe. But mostly, I need to get out of this terminal before I buy the whole airport just to fire Leonard." She turned to leave, but her path was blocked. Not by security, but by the passengers. They had formed a semicircle, leaving a path open for her, but they were close. A woman stepped forward. She was a black woman, perhaps in her 40s, holding the hand of a little girl who couldn't have been more than 7 years old. The little girl was wearing a pink backpack and staring up at Vivian with wide, saucer-like eyes. "Excuse me," the mother said, her voice trembling slightly. I wanted to say thank you." Vivian paused. "You don't have to thank me. I just wanted my seat." "No." The woman shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "It wasn't just the seat. My daughter. She saw what you did. She saw you stand there and not move. She saw you take the power back." She looked down at her daughter. "Baby, do you know who this is?" The little girl shook her head, burying her face in her mother's leg. "This is a boss," the mother said firmly. "This is what you can be. You don't let anybody move you to the back, you hear me? You own the plane." Vivian knelt. She didn't care about the dirty airport floor. She got down on one knee so she was eye level with the child. "What's your name?" Vivian asked. "Maya," the girl whispered. "Maya," Vivian said, her voice dropping the icy edge it had held for the last hour, becoming warm and rich. "Do you like math?" Maya nodded. "I like numbers." "Good," Vivian smiled. "Keep liking numbers. Numbers don't lie. People lie. Numbers tell the truth. If you master the numbers, Maya, you can buy the whole world. And when you do, you make sure you treat people right, okay?" "Okay," Maya whispered. Vivian stood up. She reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. It was heavy stock, matte black with gold embossing. She handed it to the mother. "When she's ready for an internship," Vivian said, "call this number. Doesn't matter if it's 10 years from now. I'll remember." The mother took the card as if it were a holy relic. "Thank you." "Bless you." Vivian nodded, adjusted her bag and signaled to Miller. "Let's go, Captain. We have a schedule." They walked toward the heavy glass doors that led to the tarmac. As they passed the podium, Vivian stopped one last time. Greg, the gate agent, was still there. He was sitting on a folding chair, his head in his hands. He looked up when he saw her shadow fall over him. His face was a mask of misery. He knew his job was gone. He knew he was going to be the subject of a viral video that would haunt him forever. "Dr. Sterling," Greg croaked. I didn't know." "That is the problem, Greg," Vivian said, her voice devoid of anger, which made it all the more devastating. "You didn't know, and you didn't try to know. You looked at a hoodie and saw a thug. You looked at a suit and saw a savior. You are a gatekeeper. Your only job is to open doors. But today, you slammed one in my face because you didn't like the way I knocked." Greg looked down, unable to meet her eyes. "You're going to lose your job," Vivian said. "That is inevitable. But don't let it be for nothing. The next time you judge someone, remember the moment you realized that the woman you were sneering at signed your paycheck. Learn the difference between cost and value. One is a number. The other is a person." She didn't wait for an answer. She pushed through the doors, the cool night air of the tarmac hitting her face like a cleansing wave. The noise of the airport fell away. Out here, it was just the smell of jet fuel and the whine of turbines. It was the environment Vivian loved most. Parked 50 yards away, bathed in the floodlights of the apron, was her Gulfstream G650ER. It was a masterpiece of aerodynamics, sleek and white with a silver stripe running down the fuselage. Compared to the hulking industrial mass of the Boeing 777 she had just grounded, this jet looked like a scalpel. Precise, sharp, exclusive. The air stairs were down. A flight attendant was waiting at the bottom, looking crisp and unbothered by the chaos inside the terminal. "Welcome back, Dr. Sterling," the attendant said, taking Vivian's duffel bag. "We heard there was a bit of a situation." "A minor delay, Clara," Vivian said, stepping onto the plush carpet of the stairs. "Just a renegotiation of terms." Captain Miller stopped at the bottom of the stairs. He looked up at the Gulfstream, whistling low. "She's a beauty, Viv," Miller said. "Avionics suite?" "Honeywell Primus Epic with the synthetic vision upgrade," Vivian said over her shoulder. "She practically flies herself, but I prefer a human touch. You want the left seat, Jim?" Miller's head snapped up. "You're letting me fly her? I haven't been type-rated on a Gulfstream in 5 years. It's like riding a bicycle, Jim, just a very fast, very expensive bicycle. Besides," she winked, "I own the company. I say you're qualified." Miller grinned, a boyish expression breaking through his tired features. He bounded up the stairs, turning left toward the cockpit instead of right toward the cabin. Vivian entered the cabin. It was a sanctuary of cream leather, rare mahogany, and silence. She sank into her favorite seat, the one that faced forward, the one that no one could ever take away from her. She pulled up the window shade. Outside, she could see the Stratosphere 777 pushing back. She saw the faces of the passengers pressed against the oval windows. They were looking at her jet. They were pointing. She saw the flashing lights of a police cruiser near the terminal building, likely transporting Carter Vance to booking. He would be spending the night in a Queen's holding cell, wearing a suit that cost more than the bail he couldn't pay because his assets were frozen. Vivian felt a vibration in the floor as the Gulfstream's engines spooled up. The whine grew to a roar. Miller's voice came over the cabin intercom, confident and reborn. "Sterling 1, ready for taxi. Destination, Paris-Le Bourget. Flight time, 6 hours and 10 minutes. Sit back, Dr. Sterling. I've got the wheel." The jet began to move. It taxied past the line of commercial airliners waiting for takeoff. The heavy jets, Delta, American, British Airways, all held short. The controllers cleared a path. The white Gulfstream cut through the queue like a shark moving through a school of fish. As they lined up on runway 31 left, Vivian closed her eyes. She thought about the little girl, Maya. She thought about the look on Leonard's face. She thought about the hoodie she was wearing. She realized she didn't need to change for Paris. She was Vivian Sterling. She could wear whatever she damn well pleased. The engines roared to full power. The G-force pressed her back into the soft leather. The runway lights blurred into streaks of gold. With a graceful, effortless lift, the jet broke the surly bonds of Earth. They climbed steeply, banking over the lights of New York City, rising above the traffic, above the noise, above the prejudice. Vivian looked down at the glittering city one last time. "Zone 1, she whispered to herself, a small Victoria smile playing on her lips. "Seat 1A. She opened her laptop. She had a business to run. And somewhere, in another airport, in another boardroom, there was another bully who needed to be taught a lesson. She would be ready. And that is how Dr. Vivian Sterling taught the world a lesson they will never forget. It wasn't about the seat. It wasn't about the first-class service. It was about respect. It serves as a brutal reminder. Never judge someone by their appearance, because you never know who you are talking to. The person you disrespect today might be the person who holds the keys to your future tomorrow. Carter Vance learned that the hard way, losing his career, his reputation, and his dignity in a single afternoon. What would you have done if you were in Vivian's shoes? Would you have grounded the plane, or would you have handled it differently? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please smash that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories of real-life drama. Until next time, stay humble.